Welcome to Blockmates stream. Just really cool to have you here. I know that you're super busy. For everyone, Matt is head of development for Metis, and what we wanted to do today was just we've been speaking a lot about the ecosystem over the last 3-4 weeks. We did quite a lengthy thread in terms of on Twitter on all the projects that were out there, and we wanted to just bring Matt in and just kind of speak about the past and the present and the future of the ecosystem. And yeah, Matt, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Jedi. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this chat. And where would you like to start, man?
So tell us about, how long have you been with the project, and when did you kick it off, and what's been happening? I know you guys obviously launched in November. Tell us a bit about back then, and how it all played out in the beginning. I'm sure lots happened, and we'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's been a journey. I probably found out about Metis like just over a year ago, like early August. At the time, I was just in full research mode for crypto. I wasn't actually working with any crypto projects. Just living the degen life, as they say, and getting involved in the Metis community. When I found the project, it was still quite early, and I, you know, got quite invested in terms of, staying up to date, in terms of, participating in community activities and all that sort of stuff. And by the time November had rolled around, I'd started assisting with some, copy and editing just with the foundation, trying to make sure that, the quality of the posts were all, top notch when they were going out. So that got me a bit closer involved. And then I would say about a month after that, I saw some job postings on LinkedIn, funny enough, for, business development associate, marketing associate, and they were looking for a PR, associate as well. And I revisited a conversation with the co-founders, and a couple days later had the gig. So that was, end of 2021, right at the beginning of January, I guess. And yeah, since then, kind of worked my way up. In March, kind of started leading the business development team, and it's been kind of a journey ever since, man.
Great. And in terms of where you guys, when you arrived, that was kind of like the beginning of pretty much when the bear started to kick in, because I remember November, December, the ecosystem was obviously really busy. And there was obviously, the Metis token obviously did really well initially, and it was kind of like this huge like influx of people that came in, and then as fast as they came in, they kind of like disappeared with obviously the arrival of this bear market, and kind of like everything retracing. I know that initially, like, there were a lot of kind of, like your pump and dump, uh, projects that came in, and they obviously did very well. But as we know, it's kind of like that narrative has changed now, and we're kind of looking at a more kind of real yield, in inverted commas, narrative that's playing out at the moment. How have things changed from, when you guys launched and when you obviously arrived to where things are right now? Because I know that you guys have got some really good incentives in place in terms of projects that you deem to be, desirable for the ecosystem. Obviously it's autonomous and decentralized and all those good things, but from the foundation's perspective, I know that you guys wanted to have, you know, a solid foundation in terms of the kind of projects that you wanted to attract. How has that played out recently, particularly over the last, say, 2 to 3 months? Are you guys getting those kind of projects coming in? And could you speak about that for us a bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way would just be to differentiate kind of our initial launch with kind of where we stand now. Um, at the beginning, it's mainnet launch. You really need to pull out all the stops. You need kind of all of the potential projects, pretty much everyone who's remotely interested to be engaged and looking to deploy. So it's very much like for that stage was a quantity over quality sort of approach.
Yeah.
Um, versus now, which is, you know, a much more confirmed bear market. Um, you know, we're really looking to rebuild like from a foundation of trust. You know, obviously TVLs across the board dropped and everything. But we basically decided that we weren't going to get behind any project that didn't really provide strong, you know, unique, novel value to the users, as well as, you know, safety, of course. So now that we have like Chainlink oracles, you know, we can onboard a lot of those tier one protocols that only use Chainlink oracles. So there was kind of like a bit of a gatekeeper piece for us as well, where a lot of those, you know, top DeFi apps, we were just waiting on the right oracle set. So um, yeah, now the focus is really just ensuring like composability, portability. Our biggest focus, honestly, is collaboration. We noticed at the beginning it was a lot of, you know, people coming in and kind of just focused on their own project, and everyone was playing some sort of a zero-sum game,
Yeah.
which ultimately doesn't work out well in the end. So now what we're looking for is, okay, who are the it's not even the project. Obviously, the project is super important, but you know, even who are the teams and who are the builders and devs that just get that ethos and that are dedicated to that, you know, style of building. Like we had a meeting recently with a team that just said, you know, we're a team of talented devs. Like, what are you guys looking for? And it turned into such a great meeting just because they kind of came to the table with the right attitude. It's not like, all right, here's what we've got. It's the best thing ever. It's gonna work. It's gonna compete against this and that. You know, they're like, how can we strategically fit within what you guys already have planned and then how you're envisioning this rollout and all this stuff. So, you know, I'd say those are kind of the two main shifts and kind of the approach we've taken, and the types of teams and projects and builders that we're trying to get behind moving forward.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that. I mean, we were very fortunate to get Elena on uh towards the beginning of the year. And my immediate kind of insight into, you know, the way that Elena approached things was that it was very much about, you know, we've got a very clear idea as to how we want to approach this thing. And as soon as you see that, you know, this whole decentralized, very tidy, very organized, like setup, if you can realize that and recognize that that's what our culture is, then it's actually a really easy process, you know. And it just, and then obviously I've spoken to, you know, a couple of projects that, you know, are involved, that are on the ecosystem, and their sentiment is exactly the same. It's kind of like, you know, this team is serious about what they're doing, and they're serious about obviously growing the ecosystem, but it's not about, you know, like this, let's make quick money, you know. It's like really interesting from that perspective. It's like, let's do the long haul on this thing. It's a long-term game, and, you know, let's make sure that we've got everything in place in order to do that, you know, obviously for the ecosystem and the users that are coming in and the projects that are kind of onboarding on this. And it just seems like that's the ethos that's present, you know. And it's really, in many ways, it's refreshing, because I think what happens, you know, from our experience in terms of, you know, reporting and creating content around, you know, different protocols across, you know, different ecosystems, we find that, you know, some ecosystems are very much centered around what you do for yourself. Sure, the ecosystem works and it's functional, and but it doesn't go beyond that. Whereas you guys are trying to create a culture within a culture, which I think is quite a unique thing, and it's really cool to see. I wanted to also just kind of chat around. I don't know whether it's kind of like outside your scope, but I'm sure you've got an opinion on it. And I wanted to just look at the decentralized autonomous companies and kind of like just dive into that just briefly. I mean, could you just explain to us what a DAC is and what the benefits of a DAC are? Um, versus something like a DAO?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So this is actually something Vitalik wrote an article on, or an essay, I guess. I think in 2014, even before Ethereum was actually created. So it's a concept that, has been around for a while and just not really something anyone's been acting on. So, our co-founders kind of had resonated with that idea, since it had been posted, and they began pursuing it as part of the development of Metis. So really, the simplest way to think of it is DAOs are limited in what they can do. They are essentially are set up for voting and governance and some mixture or anything like that. What they aren't really suited for is running the day-to-day operations of a company. And when you think of what those operations may involve, that could be HR, it could be, communication, it could be accounting, it could be finances. Essentially, any of the processes that are involved in, any traditional company. Our goal at Metis and, with the DAC portal is really to enable people to come in, create their own DAC from anywhere in the world. So, that's a huge part of the ethos is, there's no exclusion based on, really anything. Um, so anyone can create one of these DACs, and then anyone can access any part of the decentralized toolkit to really operate from a decentralized manner to the degree at which they want. So we're not really expecting, our first big Web 2 client to come in and just say, all right, guys, I'm ready. Like, I'm ready to decentralize 100% of our business, like right here. Let's do it. That's not how it's going to go down. It's going to be, very tailored at the beginning. It's going to be like, all right, here's like a single process that, let's experiment with this. Like,
Yeah.
how does this work? Maybe we want our HR to be, done a little more cleanly. Granted, a little more coldly, but it's just exploring the trade-offs and kind of the new ways of doing business. Um, so, as it stands, like the DACs in that capacity aren't ready. They are still in production. We should have our version 2 of the portal launching, I believe, like the end of Q3 or Q4 sometime of this year. So definitely look out for that. Um, what's also going to be cool through the DAC is we're going to have a Metis basically governance model that utilizes the DAC. So essentially, we're going to have a V Metis accumulation potential. So let's say, Jedi, you start a DAC. It's blocmates DAC. You can stake, once this Portal V2 goes live, you'll be able to stake Metis, get a proportional amount of V Metis that your DAC holds. And that, as well as providing a low stable yield on your Metis, you're also now able to participate in any governance of the ecosystem using that V Metis. So
Okay.
it's also going to tie in, the DACs and governance and, the decentralization process of Metis is all like very closely interrelated.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, that should be really cool to see. And, it's not something where you have to lock it in there. You can withdraw at any point and if you withdraw half, half of your V Metis will just go. So it'll be proportional in that sense. But yeah, that's a bit on DACs and kind of how they're going to integrate into our near to midterm roadmap.
So obviously from a metagame perspective, this is anyone can participate in the whole DAC structure and obviously the governance thereof. So are you finding, or is the strategy for even your A grade protocols, for argument's sake, to also be involved in that process where they then set up a DAC and then also earn those fees on whether they invest fees into Metis token or whether they set up a DAC directly? Do they then stand to benefit from that process as well? I mean, it seems like it's a viable like business plan for them to do that as well. Is that correct?
Definitely. I mean, there's
Yeah.
honestly no limit to how creative people want to get with it. The protocols can create DACs, interested parties like blockmates or yourself could create a DAC. A group of buddies that trades NFTs could have their own DAC. It just really depends on how you're looking to utilize it. But even just experimenting and just being like, well, what would this be like if we,
Yeah.
tried to set up a DAC? Like in the first model, it was more of like a traditional liquidity mining in the sense that, there was a certain amount of tokens allocated towards, the DACs over a certain amount of time. So people were just incentivized to go through the process of creating one just to like familiarize and, drive liquidity on chain and stuff. This launch, there's going to be a lot more utility in terms of it. And then it also is going to tie into like the governance structure that we kind of wrote about in our roadmap. So essentially, the foundation is going to be, at least at the beginning, incubating some eco nodes. And these eco nodes are so the concept essentially is taking the various pieces, at least initially, of like the Metis foundation and kind of putting them in specific blocks. So one of those blocks will be the L2.
Yeah.
One of those blocks will be Matrix, the reputation power system we're building. And then another one of those blocks will be the DAC. So basically, those three pieces will be the first three eco nodes. And the eco nodes have a basically higher level, a higher scope of governance in terms of what they can contribute to than the common nodes. And the common nodes, I believe, just being really any DAC. So essentially, the model here is for the foundation to um, this is really the method by which we're decentralizing, decision-making power. And over time, more and more nodes essentially will be able to be whitelisted into becoming an eco node and participating in that more, higher scope of governance. And then, there's also various perks in terms of becoming one of these eco nodes. I believe, participation in like the sequencer pool, participation, in the ranger pool when that comes out, alongside obviously having just more voting power, like, and more scope than, the common nodes. So that's just a bit of also background on how kind of it's all going to tie into our plan for governance and how our plan to decentralize, because we've been saying, Metis will decentralize, but it's like, how is that going to happen? And
Yeah.
it's going to be through this method. So,
So
to
I mean,
start,
I think what you obviously touched on the other kind of like, the other building block of this gamification of, because I see it as a gamification. There almost is like a, a strong gaming aspect to the way that this thing has been planned. Obviously, with Vitalik being, very much a gamer and kind of like the foundation of, Ethereum being from, the incident with his World of Warcraft and Warlock account. It's not surprising that, the next thing that kicks in here is obviously the reputation power. Um, so, I mean, you guys have almost like, I mean, I joked about this on another stream quite recently where I said that, like Metis is actually more Ethereum than Ethereum is in terms of the principles that were set out by obviously Vitalik himself. I mean, obviously he wasn't the only one involved. But tell us about the reputation power, because obviously that's one of the fundamental building blocks in this whole thing. What is it, and how does it actually apply to the whole kind of like that structure that's in place, and how does that then carry the decentralization narrative forward?
yeah, definitely. So I'm personally am a huge fan of this product and what's being built. I think it's going to enable a lot of really cool things that essentially we haven't been able to figure out. So I'll backtrack a bit and say so. Matrix is the name of this on-chain kind of social, or non-social, depending on how kind of the badge issuers are programming on the back end, a reputation power system that utilizes soulbound tokens. So these are basically NFTs that cannot be transferred. So it basically gets locked to your wallet address, for example. So comparing it to something like POAPs, which are kind of at this moment the best, one of the best methods to take a screenshot basically and look at someone's past activities and say, how involved in Web3 have you been? Here's my POAPs, but POAPs can be transferable, or they are transferable. You can buy them, you can sell them. So, it's not necessarily an accurate representation that you can trust without like a shadow of a doubt that this person did go to all these places, right? So there's limitations in that sense. And that's where soulbound NFTs come in, because unless you literally give away your private keys to someone, there's no way that this NFT can really go anywhere else. Um, so some of the really cool use cases this might enable would be, looking and measuring a person's, DeFi history, and looking at, their loans and borrowing and all these certain aspects, and being able through algorithms to assign a score. And you can essentially look at, for example, someone's on-chain credit score, and from there you'd be able to, based on whoever's kind of the provider on the back end, would be able to opt into potentially under collateralized lending, or maybe there's KYC and it's zero collateral lending, and then there's just the ability to sue or whatnot. So that's obviously not an ideal situation, but
Yeah,
if
yeah,
that's what you want, if you want to borrow
yeah.
at 0%, like on chain and KYC yourself,
Mm,
that would be a method that you could do it in that sense. Another interesting way to think about it is, it really is also, the limit is the creativity of really the badge providers. So Matrix has a front end where, yourself, myself, we'd be able to go and mint our social NFT. But then there's also the back end portal where, protocols, let's say a DEX, for example, they can go in and set up, customize their reputation badges, customize what they want, the progression laid out for. The easiest example I find is like trading volume. Let's say you're a DEX. What do you want? You want to incentivize people using your platform as much as possible. So, trading volume might be a really important metric for you. So maybe you want to give out 5 reputation badges that are all kind of stacked in terms of hitting specific metrics of trading volume. And then maybe you can add in perks into those badges where if you hit certain thresholds, you actually reduce the trading fee by certain thresholds as well. So that's just like one example that's, pretty intuitive, pretty simple, but just shows how composable this whole
yeah.
system is. And it really, it gives another layer of interaction that just feels a lot more authentic. If your Dex is issuing you like reputation badge, you're getting score, like you're gonna feel differently about that Dex than like any other Dex. It's just a different experience. It's a different level of engagement. So that's a product we're really excited about. It's obviously going to start on Metis, but the end goal is that it actually becomes just this multi-chain product.
I have a question. Do you guys have any gaming developers in your team?
We don't have any gaming developers in our team, but we are talking to a gaming studio that's been around for 20 years. We're talking to a couple of other teams that are focusing on gaming. We just don't have any internal at the moment, to my
So
knowledge.
the reason why I'm asking you that is, I mean, obviously I'm very interested to find out in terms of the greater ecosystem, what kind of GameFi there is. I mean, I did speak to Andy, who's one of your team members, and I know that there is quite a lot of talk around obviously the GameFi aspect of things, and I think it's quite a difficult one to get right. I think we've seen that it's not that easy. Even with decent games, we've seen that, in a bear market environment, you really do see the gaming side of things take a real beating. But the reason why I asked that is this, just for me, like, really does it plays like a game. I mean, I'd love to see the strategies that community members are coming up with around, what it is that you just explained, just purely from a monetary gain perspective. How do I make money in this environment, which is, the reputation, the matrix, and how it all plays together, and the different levels, like whether it's making money out of the fees that you're saving. So if you're a big time trader, and whether it's swing trading or whatever the case might be, I mean, how much money is actually at play here? I reckon there's quite a lot of money that you could be saving yourself, quite a lot of money that you could be making in terms of staking, from the DAC perspective. I mean, it just seems like the strategies that could come out of this thing are huge. I mean, it just almost seems, like you've got so many layers that are playing out here. And I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited about, what are community members going to come up with? I know that our community, the guys are already starting to talk about, like, how do we maximize, obviously the monetary gain out of this whole thing, but it just seems like it's going to go beyond that, not just about the money, but also about the sustainability of the ecosystem, which obviously protects its users, like you say, through the NFT process. And I'm really looking forward to, I mean, seeing how it all plays out, so maybe you guys do need to get a gaming developer on your team and bring more of this gamification aspect into this, because it's super cool. I mean, it really does seem like the right way to approach it, and just beyond just, guys creating games. I mean, there's a game that's being played here in terms of what you guys are doing. That's the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's a lot of neat gamification that we're tying into it, and I mean, it also goes beyond like that a bit too, into just like the social provenance. Like, let's say you'll often hear DAO contributor, right? Oh, I'm a DAO
Yeah.
contributor, but it's like how do you know?
Yeah.
How is that confirmed? It's like you go on someone's LinkedIn page, it's like CEO of Tesla or something, and so yeah, the piece really about, being able to demonstrate badge, and essentially you can have like a profile that just demonstrates your credibility. It would be like LinkedIn, but decentralized, in a way where it's like the protocols, the work, your work experiences are actually issuing those badges themselves.
Yeah.
So the ability for, any individual or group of contributors to actually, establish themselves, assuming that they're doing good work, uh, it's actually quite epic in terms of, how trustless the system becomes. It's like, well, this is clearly the best contributor. They've got, 14 more badges than anyone else. They're clearly one of the most trusted contractors of, X in the eco or whatnot. So it also works really nicely in that sense as well.
See, there we go. I mean, there's another layer to this whole thing. It's like it's incredible. It really does seem like a fantastic blueprint with which to work off of. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out, and to see, whether there will be any deviations around this thing. But I don't think there will. I mean, I think in terms of, the founders, and having spoken to Elaine, I'm pretty sure that there will be a very rigid line in terms of, this is the way that it needs to be, and that's what we're going to land up getting in the end. And it makes sense. I mean, it's what you guys are doing is it's quite unique, and it's very inclusive. So yeah, good luck with that. I wanted to just move along in terms of where you guys are obviously at now. What kind of timelines do you reckon? I mean, I know that everyone hates that question, but I mean, are you guys looking to kind of be completely at that point of decentralization a year from now, 18 months from now, 6 months from now? What is the general consensus? And don't worry, we won't hold you to it. We just kind of trying to get an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So the EcoNode rollout will be happening shortly. in terms of, I think, more of like a public rollout of that, and maybe getting some PR behind it. From that point, I would say not before 12 months would we be at that point. Just from the discussions with the co-founders, obviously decentralizing is a naturally very delicate process. So it's just something that they're navigating with caution. Not going to rush into things in a way that would create instability or anything. So from my understanding, the timeline is aiming for around 12 months after kind of those eco nodes go live.
Okay. In terms of projects that you guys, I mean, obviously there's some really exciting projects that have come to the fore, I think, over the last 3 months. I think Hummus is one of them. Seems to have really, a lot of our community has been invested in that project and are staking and are, they're loving it. Could you speak about that project and what the guys are doing there and what their plans are? Do you have any ideas? Maybe a little bit of alpha for us?
So personally, I think Hummus is awesome, and I think it's like a core infrastructure piece. It has a really unique stable swap AMM model that essentially just creates like an ultra low slippage machine. I think I was looking a couple of days ago, and and there's about 15 million TVL or something at the moment. So not even that deep liquidity, but swapping $1 million of stables into another stable, I think there was only around $500 of slippage or something. So just that level of capital efficiency, like if we're looking to attract whales into our ecosystem, people that are bridging in like 7-8 figures, we need the infrastructure in place to be able to support those people swapping around some stable coins. It's absolutely essential. So that's kind of why they are kind of one of the core players in this Metis marathon. Is just that will literally backbone kind of the entire DeFi ecosystem. If you can't swap your stables without slippage, you're not going to have much of a composability. You're not going to have much built on top. It would kind of be like building on a house of cards. So yeah, personally, I really like them. I think they've got some neat things in the works as well, with like gauges coming up and bribing and all of these neat things. They're also extremely collaborative as a team, which has been awesome. So they have kind of kicked off a collaboration with Jedi, in which they have created an alt pool on Hummus. So essentially, separate from the main gauges, it's actually isolated. They have a pool where you can deposit MAI or you can deposit USDC. What's cool about Hummus is it's all single-sided liquidity provision. So you don't need to, sell half your stables to another stable, an LP, and risk impermanent loss. Obviously, they're supposed to be stable coins, so that shouldn't be as much of an issue, but the fluctuations are still there. On Hummus, really the risk comes in on the coverage ratios. So if there's a quote unquote bank run, and let's say the USDC coverage ratio is 60%, then I believe that means only 60% of the depositors would be able to withdraw their deposit in USDC if everyone went to do it. But essentially, you just have to withdraw in an overcovered token, which is just another token that's also worth $1, right?
Yeah.
And then in the case that there's any like depegging event or something like that, they use Chainlink oracles to measure a 2% swing either way. And if there's any deviation plus or minus 2%, that gauge actually locks and it no longer becomes tradable with any other token. So essentially, barring smart contract risk or anything, I mean, there's always risk, but it seems that they've created a model that kind of caps risk at around 2%.
Nice. And I see obviously the returns in terms of staking on the the platform itself, I mean, they're obviously offering like really good rates at the moment. I mean, and it seems like it's fairly sustainable. Or is it very much reliant on kind of like, you know, the classic kind of like, relying on new members coming into the ecosystem? But it doesn't seem like we have a case like that with regards to hummus. It seems like it's pretty sustainable.
Well, the game theory of hummus is also pretty amazing in terms of like, the VHUM. So,
Yeah.
if you stake your hummus, you can basically boost your yield, and they show you what the median boosted yield is. So you can look at it and say, all right, well, if I kind of got a median amount of VHUM kind of compared to everyone else, and you can't necessarily see what that amount is. But as you build your position, you can kind of measure your boost compared to the median. Um, but as soon as you unstake any amount of your hum, you actually lose your entire VHUM total. So it kind of
Okay.
creates this system where people are incentivized to obviously boost as much as possible, but not put in enough that they want that, they'll never take it out or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then maybe the strategy is to just put it all into VHUM, and just build that position, because not only is that position able to boost yield, but it also is going to become profitable due to the various they call it the reworked haircut that they're going to be introducing just pending an audit. So
Okay.
essentially, there's a small swap fee. I think right now it's like 0.04%, and it's going to become 0.1%. And that amount will get split up into various buckets. So I believe 40% of that or something will go into a pool between all the different stables, and then monthly that pool will market by Metis, and it'll distribute in even proportion to everyone who has VHUM. So if you have
Okay.
1% of the VHUM supply, you're going to get 1% of those accumulated tokens. And it's also a method where they're not dropping stable coins to people and then the way I'm thinking about it is they're market buying Metis and then airdropping it to everyone. So I mean, even
Okay.
in the case where everyone dumped it, it's still kind of like a net like neutral.
Yeah.
So I like that as well. That they're looking out for kind of the ecosystem and the health, of rewards and whatnot. And the reason that we entered into this sort of marathon agreement with them, and are contributing to this stable source of yield, is very much because of what they're offering, the innovations they've made, their plans for gauges. I think they have plans for like NFTs as controlling positions or something as well in the future. I wouldn't speak too much on that, but yeah, we're just huge fans of what they do, the way they play ball with the ecosystem, the way they're pursuing partnerships. A lot of the AMMs are already routing their stables directly through hummus, just to take advantage, because no one else can compete in that realm. So why play a zero sum game? Like, it's just time to collaborate. So yeah, that's a few thoughts on hummus.
So, I mean, I'm just looking just for obviously our listeners and our viewers at the moment, from the single sided staking, USDC sitting at 25.5%, USDT sitting at an APR of 25.37, and DAI is sitting at 29.09. So, the incentives there, and they're not unrealistic. You're not looking at, seven figures here. It's realistic. It's in line with what you would expect to get from stables. And I would imagine that, it's just kind of like it speaks to the ecosystem, well, to this protocol itself. So yeah, very, very cool to see. And like I said, I mean, our community members, I know there's a lot of them that are raving about this. A lot of
Yeah.
them have moved stables into it, primarily from mainnet, and they've been very pleased with the result that they've been getting. You
The,
obviously spoke about Cheetah. Sorry, just you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, yeah. The last piece I'll add that I am excited about for hummus is, what really is going to unlock hummus and paint the clear picture for people is when there's a really strong aggregator. So if you look at, Platypus on Avalanche,
Yeah.
Hummus is a friendly authorized fork of Platypus, and Platypus had Vector Finance, and Vector Finance was their aggregator. So essentially, I think, and I'm not sure what the percentage was like over time, but I believe they own 30% of the VPTP. So of the entire supply of, in our case, VHUM, this other protocol that aggregated on Avalanche had 30%.
Okay.
So what that means is 30% of the boost they own. So, you were talking about 25%, 29% right now on the base yields.
Okay.
If you own 30% of the VHUM, you're going to be getting a lot more than 25%. But then it also allows you as a protocol to offer that yield through your VHUM position to consumers and take a bit off the top, retain a bit for your treasury, and still be offering those users a very maximized yield compared to that. So if you look at the median boosted APR, it's roughly 20-25%. So on average, out of or not on average, but in the middle of everyone that's staking their VHUM, they're boosting by 21%. So you can extrapolate on that to go out to the far end. If you owned 10% of the supply, your boost would probably be 300 or 400%, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
the profitability in that sense, and having these aggregators that not only are accumulating and not just dumping relentlessly, but the utility and the value add to everyone, it just really completes the cycle. So there's definitely a market right now for that, and I'm excited to see who's going to fill that.
I'm very surprised that, in light of what it is that you just communicated, I'm very surprised that, these pools aren't completely and utterly pumping right now.
Yeah,
It's crazy. I mean, it just really is. I think there's a major missed opportunity here for guys that have got deep pockets and have got, big bags to come in here and really enjoy the benefit of what is on offer here. So I'm surprised that they just haven't seen it yet. It's
yeah,
like, right, it's crazy.
and I mean,
Um,
even from a governance perspective, right? Like with Hum being emitted, with Metis being emitted, both of these are going to be used for governance in their respective fields. So Hum is going to have their gauges. Metis, you're going to be able to stake for VMetes. So there's profit taking and yield capturing and all that. But at the same time, this is a method for it to have like governance capture, right? So that's kind of a way we're seeing it too. Like the way we frame these rewards, it's not liquidity mining, it's community and builder mining, because
yeah.
we're rewarding the people that are here now, that are here early in our journey, and that are engaging in what we believe to be the innovative and necessary kind of protocols in the ecosystem. So it's also a way that you can come in and park some stables and gain governance rights over a really unique protocol.
Interesting. Very interesting. Um, any other projects on the ecosystem at the moment that you really like in terms of, essentially the same thing or along the same lines of what hummus are doing? Um,
The one I would highlight would be Shidao. I
mhm.
really like those guys. Firstly, they're just epic dudes and love to collaborate, and really understand the space. But just the niche of their product. I was just talking about 0%, borrows, right? They offer that right now. And you don't need RP badge or a social credit score to do it, but they do it through an over collateralized vault system. So essentially, on our chain right now, you can create a Metis, a BTC, or an ETH vault, and essentially you can borrow against at 0% in their own stablecoin Mai. And thanks to Hummus now, there's liquidity to swap for USDC. You can stake that Mai directly into Hummus and earn yield in that sense. And we're working with them to get deeper liquidity for like volatile pairs on like my BTC, for example, and finding the right AMM partner that can kind of carry that out. But just in terms of capital efficiency and stuff, like 0% loans are pretty epic.
Yeah. So we actually had, when we released our thread on Twitter with regards to the Metis ecosystem, one of the protocols that we had a lot of positive feedback on was obviously Hummus, and then also Cheetah as well. It seems like the guys and girls that are in the know, that are in the ecosystem at the moment and are obviously playing around, they share the same sentiment that you have, like really good protocol, really tidy. I see that they've got like 75 million it's 76 million in terms of their TVL at the moment. So, they're obviously starting to get the numbers up. And I see that they are obviously on other ecosystems as well. And maybe that's what's carried across now. Is that correct? They are on other ecos, yeah?
Yeah, they are multi-chain,
Yeah.
which is cool. And, it's been great to see kind of some of the support from their community. So essentially, they'll have bi-weekly votes for their gauges, and they will allocate Chi, which is their other token, which is a volatile token. They will allocate Chi towards the various pools for borrow incentives based on the votes that come in on the snapshot vote, basically. So they'll list all of their pools and they'll say, okay, Chi holders, vote with your Chi for which pool we would like to direct, these next 2 weeks emissions towards. So they have a certain amount of emissions, so when we launched our Metis vaults, those initially got voted in, and at one point it was paying like I think it stabilized at around like 40% APR. So
Nice.
you were getting paid 40% to borrow, and then you could then go take everything you borrowed and then go earn yield on that as well. So is a cool method. And I can't say too much, but next week should be a pretty exciting week for Cheetah and Metis in terms of our collaboration.
Great. Sounds amazing. It seems that you guys are definitely knocking on the door of the right things. And it's great to see. It's great to be commentating on what it is that you guys are doing. I'd like to, chat to you about, what it is that you guys will have done over the next few months, and then kind of circle back and just reflect upon, obviously the discussion and the stuff that we brought up in today's talk. And yeah, I think that's it from me for now. I don't know if you like to kind of add some more to the mix, but we did cover quite a bit, and I look forward to getting you back in a couple of months and just kind of reflecting on where you guys, the distance that you guys will have covered, because I know that there's obviously a lot that's happening. You've told us about a huge amount. So yeah, best of luck with that.
Yeah, much appreciated, man.
Yeah.
All I would say at the moment is, stay tuned to the marathon. We're working really hard behind the scenes to make this, a really exciting 6 months and roll out. And, it's not going to end after 6 months either. This is just kind of, phase one of where we're heading. So stay tuned to, our social channels. I would definitely, if you haven't bridged to Andromeda, hop on, check out the chain. It's lightning fast. It's amazing to play around on. We have our own bridge, like Metis, bridge.metis.io. And on there, you can find all the third-party bridges as well. Thank you so much, Jedi, for having me on. This has been a blast to chat about our eco and some of the stuff we're up to. Definitely looking forward to coming back on and seeing all the progress.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. And yeah, like I said, we big fans. We love what you guys are doing, and obviously, we there cheering you guys on. And yeah, best of luck. Look forward to seeing what comes next.
Absolutely. Me too, brother.
Cheers, man.
Okay. All the best, man.